Good morning. Thank you all for taking the time to come and see us. Ava just gave me a little introduction. What I'm going to do is just briefly tell you who we are and hopefully talk to you and tell you a little bit about the top 5 mobile innovations you need to know. Right, so mGage, we've been around for 17 years. We've got over 800 plus brands we work with. On a retail point of view, you're probably familiar with things like Click and Collect from Argos or Screwfix that you see on the television. That's just been interrupted. So you may have seen our stand earlier. We have a Nintendo that we're giving away. It's one of the retro ones, which is a hark back to the early 80s, but it's got about 30 games on it. We've been playing it all day yesterday. People have been turning up. But a little kind of introduction to what we do at mGage is just to show you the powerful ability to connect with people via SMS. So if you feel like winning one of these and going back to your childhood or even someone else's childhood, I don't know how old you are, if you text Mario to 88022, as you'll see on the screen, you'll be entered into a draw and you'll be notified today by 3 o'clock. You can come pick up your piece of retro gaming. So apologies if that scared you with the noise. I know people were out last night, but it's just a little bit of fun that we're doing here during the next couple of days, well, during the 2 days that we're here. So moving forward, I didn't get as much of a laugh as I'd expected for that one, but it is still quite early, so I'll give you some time. So essentially, what we want to talk about really is the mobile landscape. And the reason why we're kind of talking about who we are at first is just to kind of give you some understanding that we are familiar with the territories that we're talking about. As I say, we've been in business for 17 years. Globally, we look after some of the largest brands in the US, Europe. We also have a part of the business which is based in India as well. So we can give a global kind of overview. One of the things that's really interesting about mobile is how it's evolved, how the smartphone has kind of changed the way that we interact. Something that's quite interesting that I noticed recently is that Apple have patented a mobile which will fit into a shell of a computer. So in the not too distant future, you won't have a laptop. You'll just have a shell that has a keyboard and a screen, and you can plug your mobile straight into it, and that will be the real guts of the machine. Samsung are actually launching that in about 2 months' time. There'll probably be another argument about who came up with the idea first. That's between those two companies. But that just gives you an idea how important a mobile is. We did a piece of research not so long ago, and we found out something that's quite interesting, that on average it takes someone about 27 hours to report a lost or stolen credit or debit card. However, it takes someone on average 33 minutes to report a stolen mobile. And that just says a lot about just how intertwined this is with our lives. Looking at a retail point of view, online sales in the UK via smartphones have risen 51% in the last 2 years. That's something which is really important. I think we often find that people think about the year of mobile, something that's happening or it's coming. I feel like it's been coming for a long time. But I really feel like there's a real head of steam that's kind of building up. And this is why it's important, not just to look at what our contemporaries are doing right now, but also have a look to the future. Hence the reason the top 5 innovations in mobile. So, here they are. Chatbots. You may have heard a lot of people talking about chatbots recently. That's very, very good that you have, because that's really, really important. Emojis, location-based services. Google have done some incredible innovations. They're leading the way at the moment. Closely followed by the likes of Apple and Facebook, and we'll go into a little more detail about that. And voice search, which is something which is potentially the next big thing for the next couple of years. So, chatbots. If you're familiar with chatbots, you probably have used something by, you've texted in, or you've seen something on a computer, a screen where it's asked you to kind of get some further information, and a chat box has come up. Interestingly, a survey recently taken out by Gartner was that 62% of people would have no problem speaking to a chatbot, but only 22% of companies actually do this. So this is something that's interesting, that the public are actually already in a frame of mind where they're capable of dealing with speaking to someone from via a chatbot. Now, what this means to us is that you can look at all kinds of different things. Oh, excuse me, chips ahead there. You can look at all kinds of different things in which this will actually impact your business. For instance, we talk about something called digital chores. So it's something you do 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. Maybe you've got in from work, you've put the kids to bed, you're in a different place. You can look for a holiday, you can look for insurance, something like that. And essentially, there's nobody around to talk to at that time of night. So a chatbot is a great way of having something where someone can interact and you can actually probably answer 80 to 90% of their questions, and they'll go away with either a solution in mind or a route of contact. There are many companies that are doing this, and the way that they are really succeeding is they are able to weed out the people that require human contact rather than the people that just need a simple kind of question answered to move into a process. So your business can become 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that's really, really important because it's using something which is incredibly cost effective. We've actually used this with some utilities companies who used to run call centers with up to 400 people working there. They've since had to scale that back because the chatbot element of their kind of process of contacting people has now taken over, and it's been so successful, they don't need to have that extra kind of resource in that place. Moving on to emojis. Now, emojis are something that we're all familiar with. It's actually the most recognized language in the world. It's the fastest growing language ever. And it's something that we need to really be aware of, because if we leave this alone, we may think that it's just something that you do for a little bit of a joke, or it's something that a younger generation are doing. Well, as we all know, that generation will soon be taking up the reins of power itself, and there'll be people we want to communicate with. One thing that's really interesting is Domino's. Domino's Pizza, I take it we're all familiar with Domino's. They've actually been running a little bit of an experiment, but you've been able to actually order your pizza via emoji. So you could order pepperoni pizza, there's an emoji for that, there's an emoji for Hawaiian, and it's something that actually engages with them. They also have a really strong way of tracking the delivery of their actual products. So, we've all seen your pizza's on its way, or it's in the oven, or it's at preparation stages. They're now using a way that you can actually order that pizza in the first place just by using something really, really simple like an emoji. And it's really interesting to see how much of an uptake that's had. It's something that currently happens in the States. I'm guessing it's going to come over here because everything normally does if it works. But it's really interesting because it's a new form of a digital ad, but also you can actually make these emojis that are relevant to your brand. People start talking about your brand when they're talking about something else. That's really, really powerful. And that's something you can do quite simply by using emojis. Moving forward, location-based services. This is something that we're kind of familiar of, but it's something that keeps evolving and getting better and better. One thing that we're really, really excited about is the way that you can actually track via Wi-Fi. So bear in mind there's Wi-Fi in this auditorium right now. It's not out of the realms of us be able to actually contact people or track people and send them relevant offers. So if we look at things like, historically, like beacons, where this was seen as something where you had to invest in, it could be something you do in a retail store. They're a great example. A store like Selfridges in London has 4 floors, different types of products are on sale on each floor. A location-based way of messaging or targeting somebody is A, finding out if they're actually in the building in the first place and giving them some kind of incentivized offer. B, if they're walking past and they've got an app or they've got something like this, you can actually drag them in by giving them something that's relevant to those guys. But once they're actually in the store, you don't want to bombard them, but maybe they make a purchase. And if you know what floor they're on, you could then target them with another offer. It could be something like, congratulations on buying your pair of shoes. There's 20% off socks today. Maybe you want to invest. Or maybe you give them a card which allows them to go up to the Starbucks on the 4th floor and get a free coffee. It's something that kind of actually rewards and informs people, and it's very difficult to actually know the shopping patterns of someone, but if you actually are able to target somebody who's in store at the exact time where they're making their purchases, this is really, really powerful. So we're seeing how this is kind of evolving, and now using my Wi-Fi technology, we can do this in a way that you don't need to have beacons and other kinds of sets up there. So this is something that's going to be becoming more and more prevalent within the industry. So we want to kind of make sure that you guys understand about that and you can start thinking about it in your strategy, because it's going to be something that's going to make your lives a lot easier. Google innovations. So Google are one of the biggest innovators in the world. Okay, we know that. But what they've done recently is start looking at what the future will look like. You may have seen or read the stories about the guys at Facebook creating a glider which can take off and can fly for 6 months without landing. And what it does, it actually beams down Wi-Fi. And they're trialing this in parts of Africa where it's really hard to get, a Wi-Fi kind of service out there. And it's allowing people in really distant places to actually, make contact and learn and search. But the flip side of that is are the likes of Facebook and Google thinking about moving away from the mobile phone networks? I think that's probably already kind of happening because they are thinking about, well, if people use chat or voice over things like WhatsApp or what have you, we don't actually need to have a mobile phone network for that. We could just use a Wi-Fi, a secure Wi-Fi. So looking at things like hello, which is the, not the Cockney rhyming slang for saying hello, but hello is the sort of text SMS option you have on the new Pixel phones. This is something that these guys are thinking about moving forward with, and maybe one day, in the not too distant future, dropping off the SMS and switching over to this. It's something that we work with at the moment because we see this as being a really, really important part of how you'll actually use Google. One thing that's happening right now is click-to-text extensions. Now, this is something that you've probably been unaware of because you may have just missed it, but bearing in mind that 60% of all the purchases are probably made on mobile now, how do you go to find things? Well, you Google, you search, you look at something. If you see on the screen here, I'm not too sure if that's come out well enough, but just behind me, we've got the what happens if you search for mGage in the UK. And there's actually a little button on Google now that says text for more information. So you can have immediate communication with somebody who's searching. Now, one of the reasons that we've thought about using messaging for the right solution, often email has become the default way, then we look at social media, we look at other types of messaging or contact. One of the biggest things that really strikes people is that on average it takes about 33 seconds for a person to answer and read a text message. Compare that to email, it's about 28% of emails are opened within a 24-hour period. So if you've got something which is time sensitive, if you've got something which is really important that you want somebody to actually get a hold of, and this could be something around targeting people around bank holiday weekends or payday weekends. A lot of our clients tell us that they often see people ghost shopping the week before they get paid. So maybe it's the time when your income has been eaten up by everything that life has to offer, or it's a case that you're actually just thinking, well, next week when I get paid, I'm going to go and treat myself to this, this, and this. And then when you actually do get paid, how do you remember to go back and look at that search? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. A way of actually getting back in touch with people immediately and offering them something is a fantastic way to do that through SMS, because we know that it takes about 33 seconds for someone to answer an SMS rather than an email. So by Google including this into their search terms, they're kind of getting that language up and running already, and they're making it easier for you to interact with people via mobile. One of the things I should mention that some people kind of think like, what are the laws around contacting people in the UK using messaging? Well, it's quite simple. They've got to opt in first. They've got to actually choose you. You can't go out there and just contact people that haven't actually registered. But this is a really, really good thing because it means that people are actually showing an interest. There's no idea of kind of spamming or that kind of or that kind of language. People have actually shown an interest, so they're there. And by Google doing this, it's really pushing the way forward for further innovations into messaging. So I've kind of talked about it here, but this is essentially what the text to Google to messaging looks like. It's fairly simple. You text for further information. You then respond back. And you could put anything in there. You could put a link to a coupon that you could actually take in your phone and redeem in a store. It could be a short video that actually explains your brand. A lot of people will tell you that you shouldn't have a video longer than 15 seconds if you're talking on social media channels, if you want it to be relevant. In SMS messaging or chat messaging, you can go a little bit longer because people will actually be quite surprised they can get this really cool video on their phone. So their engagement levels are higher. So it gives you even more time to actually allow them to see what it is that they're actually searching about and how easy it is to actually get in touch. Make a purchase. That's the hopeful thing, right? And finally, I'm moving on to voice search. So voice search is something that I'm guessing pretty much everybody here has used Siri or used the Google search section on their phone at least once. Well, it's something that's really, really picking up ahead of steam. Currently, 20% of all searches on Google are done via voice. Gartner are saying that by the year 2020, 85% of all their relationships with a brand will be done without interacting with a human. So that's basically saying that you're going to be searching for voice on your phone, and then you're going to be probably talking to a chatbot. But what's really interesting is about how are we going to prepare ourselves for the future? How are we going to find ourselves in voice search rather than, say, Google AdWords? It's something that's really, really coming. We think possibly 50% of all searches will be done by voice by the year 2020. So it's right now we have to start thinking about how we're going to manage that process and how we're actually going to interact with people. So if I'm looking at other things, I mean, if you've been to any events over the last 6 months, you'll normally find some stand giving away an Alexa or an Amazon Dot. And it's something that is just started to kick off. It's something that we're all going to have part of our life. But it's important to see that how the brands have taken notice of this, and they're starting to think about their strategies for moving forward. Well, that brings me to the end of my presentation. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to listen to me. If you'd like to know anything more about any of the topics we've talked about, please text hi to 8822, and myself or one of our team, who are just located outside in a stand at K17. You can't miss us. We're the one with the retro Nintendo machine with a big queue of people. We'd be more than happy to answer any questions or talk to you. But right now, though, I'd like to open up to the floor. If you have any questions for me, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Anyone? Any questions?
Not even any questions about how many games the Nintendo has? It's got 30. Super Mario's there. Double Dragon 2.
There's a question there.
Walk faster. I'm joking.
Hi, I'm interested in voice searches in terms of product descriptions. So would you have any recommendations for product descriptions and voice search? Should it be different, or should it be considered, like, I don't know, enriched anyway? And what should we do with the graphics then?
Yeah, that's interesting. There's actually another thing which is actually in development called RCS, which is basically where you are having a rich kind of content that comes back from your Google searches. So it will have moving images and videos and things like that. I would say that the best thing to do is associated with any kind of voice search is that you would have a further descriptive video that replies. So for instance, if someone said, let's give an example, holidays in the Costa del Sol. Right, so what would actually come up is in your voice search would be the first things that actually appear are 3 or 4 videos. Could be a link to a TripAdvisor account, could be something like that. Therefore, you've got engaging content. Then if you could then have that, not so much as sponsored, but you're kind of showing it, you are then the route to kind of follow up and have a further link to maybe a quote for a holiday or for a section on reviews of that particular place. So it's kind of a bit of a mixed bag, because right now it's so new. I think we're kind of looking at people who are going to take a few gambles on this and try out a few new things. But effectively, I would say the best place to start is by including video results within your voice searches. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes. Lady in the third row.
I just wanted to ask, how could a brand use SMS to increase sales?
Okay, that's a good question. There's a number of ways you could do that. We do a lot of work around loyalty and messaging. So there's loyalty programs, and it's about the interaction. The biggest thing with any type of contact you'll have with the brand is, what are you actually getting from it? You know, we don't want to just be sold to. We want to have something where we can learn or we can engage with. We can kind of nurture. So I'll give you an example. We were talking to a brewery company recently, Carlsberg, and they've just moved into the whole craft beer phenomenon almost. It's now become something which is kind of reaching out. But what they've identified is that there are a number of people that just don't know what it is. They're not quite sure which one to choose from. They're bamboozled by it. So we looked at a way that they could actually have a short code text message, which is essentially what the 8822 is. And this was a way that this would be on the branding in the bars in certain places. And what you could do is you could basically text in and you could ask what type of craft beer they had there, give me a description of it, explain what it's all about. So it helps them in the process. Once they've done that, they've actually opted in. So they're allowed to actually send them further messages. And what they would then do is send them vouchers or coupons which would allow them to have maybe 20% off, or maybe there was a case that there was a sporting event happening like a Champions League, so there'd be a cheaper opportunity to buy those drinks in that particular time. So it's a way that they can actually reach out to engage customers, educate them, and then also keep in touch with them, but offer them something which is relevant to them, or which is something they're going to use time and time again. And over a period of time, that's how you build up a brand loyalty, and you actually then will see that transfer into guys and girls, maybe buying that brand and taking it home and having that in their fridge or their store. Another way that you can look at interacting or building brands is the kind of targeting. It is looking at what is important to that particular customer and delivering a way for them to actually get in touch with it quickly. The best way to do that is around time-sensitive notifications, what we sometimes call micro moments. So when somebody actually has an idea because they've got, there's a problem in their life, they need to actually do something. So if you're there in a way that you can actually interact straight away, you can then come back to them time and time again around those same kind of time points, have something really interesting. Does that answer your question? I hope so. Thank you. How are we doing for time? A little bit longer. Any other questions before I wrap up? Oh, one just at the back.
Hi there. Quick question about mobile payments.
Yes.
So once you've engaged with the consumer, you've engaged, you've interacted with them, etc. What restrictions then do you have on what you can actually then sell them via a mobile payment?
Well, interesting question. There's a couple of things you can do. One of the things we have in the UK is called Pay For It, and this is it's basically an organisation that kind of came together. It's made up of all the mobile phone networks, and they've decided to actually work in a way that you can pay for something on your mobile phone bill. So what this means is it's pretty similar to having a Sky account when you download a movie and that adds to your bill each month. You can buy a product or service, if it's digital, via the Pay For It format. You can actually look at maybe creating a digital voucher or code, which you can then take and redeem in store or something like that. At the moment, it's capped at around £30 a day, so it's good for buying subscription services mainly, not so much larger ticket items. Other things you can look at is about in-app payments. So you can basically have a payment format within your app which you could actually buy, or you look at things which are quite simple. So maybe some of the online retailers like ASOS or Mr. Porter, Net-a-Porter, where you then go into a standard kind of credit card sign-up. So it's more about, I think it's probably better to use for a customer engagement tool, so you can actually find new customers and actually allow it an easy payment platform for them. However, the only caveat I'd say with that is that you want to understand, are you selling something which people are comfortable to buy on their mobile? And going back to what I just mentioned, Mr. Porter, Net-a-Porter, a while ago they were actually selling BMW i3s on their phone app for about £40,000. This seems crazy to me because, yeah, there's a lot of expensive things on that store, but that's probably a little bit more money than anyone had kind of ventured to kind of buy. But what was interesting is that when I had a conversation with those guys, they were telling me that actually they sold between 4 and 5 of those a month. And I was astonished by that. But I think this actually probably looks at a way that we're kind of thinking about what we actually buy. If you look about 5-10 years ago, it was very difficult for people to actually put their bank details into an online payment schedule without being really, really scared. Now we're getting so used to it. We're thinking about buying things like, we'll easily buy things like tickets on our mobile phones. We'll look at airplane flights. We'll look at all those sorts of things. But it starts to get bigger and bigger. And when you look at it now, cars being purchased on your mobile phone without even being seen before, it's not a million miles away. And I think you'll find that some of the other car providers, including BMW, but things like Hyundai and Honda, they're making that happen really, really quickly. So gives you an answer to that question. There's a lot you can do, but essentially I'd say that the SMS format is either leading you to either a pay-for-it payment flow, or it's taking you to an in-app payment message. Yeah, thank you.
Any further questions? We still have some time. No, I think that's it.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you very much for your time. Make sure you text Mario to 8822 or text hi and come and see us. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michael.